Hello everyone. Ooh. Thank you for joining us today at Ars Electronica. My name is Helen Starr, and the title of this segment is The Re-Enchantment of Humanism. A title taken from an essay written by Sylvia Wynter. Sylvia is a very well-known and wonderful Jamaican philosopher. She is a very broad and complex thinker, and the topic of today, where we'll be looking and talking to three amazing computer animation artists, we'll be interrogating through and with their work as our lens, what it is to be human and how to be human as praxis. So first of all, I would like to introduce our Golden Nica Prize winner, Guangli, and I would ask say hi, if you would like to introduce yourself and talk to us a little about your work. And then we'll do the same with Veneta, and then we will end with Erick, and then we can go into our marvelous conversations.
So I will start, right? And hi, thanks, Alan. And my name is Guangli Liu. I'm a Chinese artist based in Paris. I'm very happy to be here to present my work, Winter Seasons for the Forest. So my project is a short experimental documentary based on a personal experience of an old Chinese survivor of the Khmer Rouge. I met this person at Nice when I was still a student at school. And this encounter leads me to a part of history that we don't talk about at all in China mainland. So I just suggested that that's due to the connection between the Khmer Rouge, the so-called Communist Party of Cambodia, and the Communist Party of China. So the sad story about the Chinese diaspora during this Khmer Rouge tragedy is forgotten, totally forgotten in China mainland. So maybe I'm going to do a short presentation about the context from 1975 to 1979. Under the regime of the Khmer Rouge, nearly 2 million people died abnormally, which is almost a quarter of the country's population, including 20,000 Chinese Cambodians. And the chaos in Southeast Asia in the mid-70s led to a wave of refugees to Europe. So when I started the research, I met a lot of old refugees and their descendants who constitute a very important part of the Chinese community in Europe. And today, about 3 million overseas Chinese live in Europe. So over time, I gradually formed the image of French Indochina in the 1970s. And the project somehow became a portrait of a whole Chinese diaspora who has been through this tragedy. So talking about, I'm going to talk about maybe a little bit the technical part. Maybe we could play the short video.
Are we going to play the short? Yeah.
So the project is basically a real-time simulation generated by a game engine, and it's combined with some archives intended to illustrate the process of reconstructing memory. So basically, I created a total subject-dependent digital universe with the help of a game engine, in which my virtual avatar, who is also the cameraman, could go through a real experience by making interactions with the digital universe. That means I basically created a video game for the interaction and also the 3D shooting. Each shot in 3D world would give a different result, just like in a physical world. This part may be completely invisible in the film, but this part, this self-description about my virtual existence is very important to the logic of the project. As you may see here, is this virtual avatar filming in the 3D work, and this is the result, the camera view, this is the result of the 3D shooting. And I think this is my presentation about my work. So thank you.
So really, really wonderful, Guangli, and something that really came up with your work was this notion of the critical fabulation, which was put forth by Sadea Hartman, an amazing African-American scholar, in particular for people whose histories have not been recorded, and certainly people whose histories have not been recorded by themselves and through their own voice. So critical fabulation often takes what is evidence and weaves personal narratives intermixed with factual documentary to recreate what is a countertelling of history. And your work very much spoke to me in this way. We'll go now to Veneta, who is also making a countertelling, but a futuristic countertelling with her work, AIVA. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Veneta Androva. I'm an artist from Bulgaria, normally based in Berlin, but right now in Sofia in Bulgaria. And yeah, I'm very happy to present here my work AIVA, and it will be great if we could start with the trailer, and then I'll tell you a bit more about my process.
This is interesting, the male figure in its perfection, a masculine heroism. I have so much information about that specific concept in my database. This could be something.
Yeah, so this was the trailer of AIVA, which is a 13-minute long animated film that I did in 2020. For the project, I invited Nadia Dallo and Benedict Frey to compose the music, and the narrator's voice is read by Vivian Petit. So it was a very small team. I would like to give you a little bit of a background how this project started in 2019. It's important for me since the work questions infrastructures of power distribution, conditions of producing art, as well as structural problems in the context of representation and inclusion. Bulgarian Fund for Women launched an open call in 2019 for women artists on the topic of women's representation in the arts, to give visibility to the work of women artists and to increase also their access to financial resources. There were 107 applications, 9 projects were selected, AIVA was one of them, and the maximum budget was €1,750 per artist grant, which was the budget that I had for making the film and also for production costs of the final exhibition, which was part of the grant. And in parallel to this, Bulgarian Fund for Women sent an inquiry to 10 states galleries in Bulgaria to check the gender representation ratio in their collections. And yeah, the numbers were very scary, as also in Bulgaria, as in the rest of Europe and in the world probably. Like, just an example, 9% of the permanent exhibition was by women artists. And as we know, like almost the entire visual history seems to be kind of a monologue. The woman is present in the Western art history as a naked muse, as a mother, but mostly reduced to an object of the male gaze. And this is how I started working on AIVA, by developing a project which inverts the stereotypical roles of the male genius and the female muse, and accordingly the gaze. Starting from the question that Linda Nochlin formulated in 1971, why have there been no great women artists? I researched on the topic of the myth of the male genius, which we all know very well from the white male art history of the Western society. And I used in the film several references, art historian references of such kind of mystification, which cultivated that myth for centuries. Just a small example will be that I designed AIVA's studio accordingly to one of the first paintings, which depicts an artist studio as a working space from Kirsting, showing Caspar David Friedrich working in an aesthetically bare space for a contemplative and reflective process. AIVA is a film in a film. It's a fictional art documentary about a female AI artist created by a white cis male art dealer and a cis male engineering team. And the gaze is about to be reserved for a second time in the film because AIVA is trained with a biased data set which represent mostly the white male in the set. She's studying the male muse, exploring different posture, and examining masculinity in its diverse forms, like archaic types like the hero, the genius, the warrior, the athlete. And with a noticeable touch of irony, the viewer is confronted with different stereotypes of masculinity which are being projected on the male muse. And everything ends up in AIVA's solo show, where she's surrounded by the engineering team that created her and her art dealer and gallerist. And all of her works have been sold out, bringing a huge profit for her creator. And the project raises the problematic question about female genius in the form of artificial intelligence created by men inside an art market structure where women artists are still very much underrepresented, and focus also on the lack of women's perspective in the field of artificial intelligence today and what this leads to, a world in which algorithms are designed to serve human needs and are represented as female, gendered as female, and reproduce problematic stereotypes of women's role in the society. That's it from me.
Thank you, Veneta. So in this, again, in terms of how to even begin to rethink these very complex problematics, we can really draw from Sylvia, who really talks about us finding what is metaphysically human for all of us, and how to get away from this constant thinking and rethinking of genres of human. And here we can really think about the problem really beginning with Aristotle in the Western canon, who creates in his thinking about the quality of the soul, he says humans have the best soul, animals have the second best soul, and the third most primitive soul belongs to the plant. So he creates these three hierarchies, and within these hierarchies, with men, women come below men, etc., etc. And we can see these patterns flowing through thousands of years and ending up in these outcomes which we're still trying to grapple with, and even grapple with where we put an AI in all of this, and but ultimately, how do we get away from thinking in this old way if we do all want to live in a just society? So now we'll go to Erick Oh and his amazing work, Opera. So Erick, if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about the work.
Yes, of course. Can I share my screen? See if once I get the cue, and then gonna go ahead and share my screen. Okay, great. Is this shared? Okay, great. There we go. First of all, thank you so much. It's a huge honor. My name is Erick Oh. I'm a filmmaker, director based in California, currently logging in from Korea. Well, my family is. I'm just staying here just for the summer with my family. So Opera is a animation, single channel animation that is actually designed for installation. But before going into more of a structural, formal aspect of it, love to introduce what actually exactly Opera is. Opera is an animated piece that portrays the reflection of human life, society, and history. So it poetically talks about some sensitive issues like racism, terrorism, religion, natural disasters, war, education, economy, and more in different part and class in our society. So everything you can name it, that's all included in the world of opera. So the cycle of this vicious cycle of history repeats. So it is, as I said, 5-minute long single channel video that loops forever. So basically, it consists of 2.5 minutes of the daytime, and then the 2.5 minutes of the nighttime, and then it goes all the way to the daytime. It just loops forever. So you will have to actually watch a couple of times to embrace everything here, because as you can see, there are many, many stories and vignettes happening at the same time. Just to give you an idea, there are 24 different sections here. And then every individual section has a different message and idea, but they are all delicately connected to one another. So no matter where you start watching, either from, let's say, below bottom where the slaves are actually, or you can start viewing from the top where the king is actually. And if you start following what they're doing, and you'll end up visiting every corner of this pyramid structure, because everything is connected, just like our society. So the main inspiration to this piece, first of all, I gotta say that this piece took me about 4 years to complete. Yeah, it was a long marathon like production, and then when I first designed this, it was the year, we can travel back in time to the year of 2017. So this was the year where the whole world was pretty chaotic. I mean, it's pretty chaotic at this point now, right nowadays as well. But this was 2017. And then in the state side, this is the year where Donald Trump became the president, but not making any political statement. All I'm trying to say is the whole nation was split. The polarization was really severe. And there are a lot of hatred, there are a lot of controversies, and there are a lot of conflicts to one another. And on the other hand, in Korea, which is my another home, where all my family and friends and where I grew up was also going through some difficulties. This photo right next to Donald Trump is really the Seoul in that year, where in the central Seoul, millions of people gather up in central Seoul, and after months of riots and protests, the president Park Geun-hye got impeached. How many countries actually go through this, honestly? So you can imagine how chaotic the whole country must have been. So this is what the world around myself was like. So I was angry, devastated, sad, but there was nothing I could do about it. So that's when I thought, I got to do something about it. As an artist, I need to create something that hopefully raise awareness and ask some important questions to ourselves. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as I start the production, years passes by, and unfortunately things got to get worse, Black Lives Matter, and then what happened in Hong Kong, and what happened in Paris, and in this COVID-19, you name it, so I had to just kept on moving to really fully complete this piece, to again hopefully give opportunity for the viewers to actually really stop running and think about where we are. So that's what opera is. And then coming back to the, how do you view this, part of it, there are two different ways to actually experience this piece. One is exhibition. So this was a photo that was taken, last year in Ars Electronica in Linz, a Deep Space AK. And then I wasn't able to make it last year too, because last year was the year where the pandemic actually happened. But thankfully, they sent me this amazing photo. But this is basically the most ideal way to experience this piece. So full-on 8K resolution. And then again, you got to loop it a couple of times, and you can walk around. And you are the camera. You walk around, and you can actually step farther away to see the overall view. And then we can walk closer to observe what's really happening in the individual section. And you can, of course, discuss with your friends next to you. So that's opera. And the other way to experience this is the theatrical version, cinematic version. So I made it into an 8-minute-long short film that consists of day, night, and another day, and then the end. So I put the camera move, I tweaked the music a little bit so that there's a little more cinematic experience. And then thankfully, it was able to be introduced in many different film festivals and different venues. And one of the best recognition I ever imagined that would happen to my life was Oscar nomination. So thankfully, thanks to that, opera was able to get a little more exposure to broader audience. So yeah, so that's opera. And yeah, I'm really happy to present this and then talk a little more about this piece with you all. Thank you. I think I'm gonna stop sharing.
So thank you, Eric.
Yeah.
So listening to you talk, I'd like to link your work, which is around ecological thinking with Veneta's, and take a moment to recognize the brilliance of Maria Sibylla Merian, who is lived in the 17th century. She was a scientific illustrator who discovered metamorphosis and was the first person to actually document the process of ecological thinking. She came to my part of the world and was also an abolitionist, came back to Europe, was very famous, and then was erased through history by the men in history who said she was a crazy woman, and who would ever imagine you would have a bird-eating spider. But she's being revitalized at the moment, and definitely thinking about your work, the importance of not thinking of yourself as a single unit, and the importance of Maria Sibylla Merian's work and how it was erased through history, how we're putting this back in, all speaks actually to all three pieces. So I don't know, maybe what would be nice if we could talk about what we relate to with each work, and I'll put the first question to Guangli. How you relate to the other artists' work from your perspective. Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry, I didn't notice that. I said it was a really good question. I mean, all the three artists has done very different work, but somehow I can really feel a connection to each piece. I mean, for me, my work is about, first of all, my experience of a certain virtual reality. For example, I'm going to start a little bit with my work. During the reign of the Khmer Rouge, the entire country was locked inwards, so leaving behind very few images. So as a result, we construct a collective imagination of this part of lost history according to two extreme forms of narrations: the propaganda video that made by the Khmer Rouge regime, and also the disaster images who were spread throughout the whole world after the fall of the regime. So together, these two connective narratives render the history of this particular time into a virtual reality imagined by people it touched. So for me, the project is first of all about a virtual reality experience and also about storytelling patterns. And so it's very interesting to find when I saw the piece of, for example, Veneta talk about the female artists starting in the contemporary art production, and also the piece of Erick talking about the repetitive history in human history. So for me, it was a very interesting experience to show my work with these two distinguished, wonderful works together, and I think that's all for me. Thank you.
Right, because I think one of the most important things about telling history is if we understand our histories and they become a map, they become a compass for us and remind us how and when and not to repeat the bad things of the past. So the archive of humanity really must not be controlled by a single perspective or a single voice. I don't know, Veneta, how you think of your work as a corrective to the archive, as an invitation for us to think deeply about, you know, the commodification of art, whether for you art and the erasure and silencing of women's voices within the artistic canon is felt as a loss. Do you see it as a sacred loss, for example?
For sure. For sure, this silence of not only women and not only in art, also in different fields, and not silence of women, but also of other minorities, it's a loss for sure. I mean, there is no question about that. But what I found, back to the previous question, what I found interesting also in the topic of repetition of history is that in my case, I try to escape this myth of the male genius, not only in the context of art, market or art, the art world, but also in the context of artificial intelligence and tech. What we have nowadays, because over there the lack of diversity is also very strong. And for example, in Erick's piece, there is like this: you cannot really escape the repetition of. There is. I found it when I watched the film. I thought like I felt connected to this. How you're trapped in a system. The system has these rules, and you're like really, you cannot really move from one sphere to another. It's like it's very much you're born in it. It questions a lot of a lot of problems that we had in the history of mankind, and they're repeating the whole time. And in my case, like Helen, you said you studied with like Aristotle. This was a very long time ago, and we have still this dominant male. How to say it? The dominant male on the top of the pyramid, even though we had such a long path in between Aristotle till today, and about this, about the question of archiving reality, and this is like where I see my work really connected also to Guangli's work, is that I also understand myself as a kind of like my work is fictional, but it documents things that are happening around me. When I write my scripts, I use a lot of documentary material, so it's I have these other fictional layers in between, as he has it in this virtual reality translation of historical facts, and this is where I felt for me very strongly the connection, and yeah.
And Erick, how the other works resonate with you?
A lot, actually, because I think I'm looking at, I think I try to describe our humanity from the telescope perspective. That is why I'm talking about entire system and society, community, and also within the history and in the passage of time, right? And then how I see Guangli's work is really what happened to the certain district in China, and also in a certain district in Cambodia, and then what happened, because as a consequence of communism, and then in Veneta's case, yeah, of course, like women rights and all these like things that's happening to us. For example, in the world of opera, I didn't necessarily showcase any gender, except for certain areas that, coming from biological, things like having a pregnant, of course, it is a very sensitive issue. And that is exactly why I kind of wanted to create this avatar-like character who conveys everything. Like, it doesn't have even the racism, a race or gender or anything like that. So basically, long story short, what Veneta was trying to showcase and tell through your work, Veneta, and also Guangli's work, totally, it resonated a lot in a very, very deep personal level. And yeah, I think at the end of the day, all three pieces are really touching upon humanity in a way, where, how we need to actually, are we getting better in a way at the end of the day? Of course, technology is being advanced. There's evolution, but are we really? I think that's really the question we're trying to actually throw to ourselves and also to each other, I guess. So in that manner, of course, I resonate a lot with both of the works, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, yes, absolutely. And one of the things about the works that really spoke to me is that you all three, in a completely different way, have had the experience of being embodied as the other, right? And there was this poetic, emotional thread which ran through all of your work, which was, and I think this is what is the most important aspect of art, when art really becomes transformative, is when we stop thinking in a rational way about what we're looking at and engaging with, right? And then we respond to it as beings rather than as thinking beings, or in a different thinking way, because we can't really stop thinking. But yeah, I mean, it really is about how you respond to something as human rather than a type of human. And yeah, I've just been wondering about your thoughts on Sylvia Wynter. My mission this year was to non-stop have a conversation about the amazing Sylvia Wynter, who began her life as a dancer, as an artist, and she's in her 90s now, and she's professor at Stanford University as this wonderful thinker. But the fact that she herself began not in a traditional educational way, she began as an artist, she began as a performer. Just wondering what, from each of you, what the artistic voice can do to reshaping and rebuilding this world. I'll go backwards this time, start with Erick. and maybe ask you what is an artist, and as a political artist, which is the big shift that we're seeing in the art world at the moment, that feels very much like the 60s, where activism and politics is really much very important in the arts, and what, as an artist, you think you can bring to the activism space.
So just to sort of rephrase, Helen, your super philosophical, question, like at the end of the day, how art can do to our humanity. I don't know. Is that the core of the question, maybe? Because activism is a certain part of who we are, So like art doesn't just apply to activists or anything like that. Just to share my overall perspective, I think, I don't know, art really, art makes you think. I mean, really simply, I think, because, it's different from theory. It's different from logics, I think, Art really makes you open your heart and open your ears and eyes. And then really, it brings you, it comes to you with emotion. And that is why you get to be vulnerable and you get to be opened and then hear each other out. I think that's what art does. A good art does. Of course, I don't want to, it's just me sharing my outlook on art. But that's how I see art and responsibility and power of art. So, and then that's what I am always been striving to be as an artist. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm making myself sense, but that's how I view it. Yes,
you're making the most wonderful sense. I mean, talking about love, right? That is an incredible privilege that art allows us to talk about our emotions, to talk about love in a public way. And what about you, Veneta? What would you say as an artist that you can bring?
Well, me as an artist, like when we say political art, I don't understand political art in the sense of activism and from the 60s only. But I mean, every artwork that we produce is produced in our context of the time that we're living in the culture that we're socialized in. In that sense, I guess every work has this political aspect, in my opinion. But in general, what art really, like art has the kind of documentates the history of humankind in a way. And this is what I found so fascinating about art. And it always has a political aspect, but also has a much more higher aspect, the aspect of like documenting the stage where we are and what's happening and what's bothering us and what moves us and this is for me the core.
Sort of how humanity transforms and remakes itself, so documenting the sort of ebbs and flows of cultural history. And before we go to questions, I would like to hear what Guangli thinks about his role, as especially coming from, China, where it's quite...
Yeah, it's really a hard question to answer. I mean, in a very personal view, I don't think art could actually make the world better, but it can help the world looks better. I mean, between the world that we will sing it to be and the world we would like it to be, there is a gap. I mean, artists are working on this gap by asking constantly questions, I mean. So, yeah, taking my work as an example, instead of creating a good storytelling about human traumas, I'd like more to create moments of confusion For example, by making images black and white, projecting archive images to trees, and creating a realistic image, 3D imagery, which makes the audience can tell what they were actually seeing, what were the archives or what were the 3D scenes. So I'd like to say we should make the same kind of effort to learn about history. We should stay maybe skeptical about what really happened instead of allowing the documentaries, books, or films to convince us about what happened. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's my answer to this question, I think.
The importance of countertelling histories, right, which are often controlled by people with their own agendas. On this note, I'd like to introduce to the three of you one of your fans who I met at the festival and wanted to use this opportunity, since you couldn't be here, to introduce you to Rebecca, who is also an artist and works in the same field and had done the virtual offering of the Starts Prize. So Rebecca and I have been visiting your artworks together and talking a lot of your artworks. And I thought, rather than only being me, maybe Rebecca would like to ask you some questions about your work, if that's okay. So, Rebecca, if you introduce yourself first.
Yes, hello. My name is Rebecca Marlich. I'm an artist, and I was commissioned by the Stars Initiative and Ars Electronica to produce an online experience to show 21 art projects in a virtual space, and to make it relivable also later online. And I'm working also with game engine technology, so I was really impressed by, I mean, all of your works, but Guangli, how you use the game engine to retell the stories which are untold, and also mixing it with found footage or your real footage without even, for me as a game engine artist, I couldn't even tell where was this barrier, where did the project from the game engine stopped and the real footage began. So I was quite impressed how you use the technique of game engines to produce your work. And my question would be to all of you, also to Erick, since your work reminds me of Hieronymus Bosch's famous painting, translating it into the here and now, and also creating, with this two-dimensional work technique, a three-dimensional space. So my question would be, can you imagine to take your projects further into three-dimensional space, into taking it to the audience and kind of using new technologies to make it more approachable or relivable, or to take the experience of your work one step further? If you could imagine this, or what's your stand on using game engines and producing games to show art?
So I can maybe take that. Thank you, Rebecca, first of all. 100% yes, if I have proper funding for this. It'll be amazing. So two different thoughts, I think. One is, since this two-dimensional video itself is already completed, I am definitely still in the process of taking this into the spatial experience, for sure, because as I said, it has to be presented in the physical space, warehouse, kind of really, really big space and projected on the wall. But I want to take it further. Maybe we can think about a little more projection mapping based, project where we can even create some installation or, break down video into different pieces and create another opportunity to actually revisit this piece from a much more immersive experience. But and then second of all, yes, totally, it would be actually amazing to make this into a little more interactive piece, so that you can be one of the characters. Why not? And walk in and out, and then even zoom in and out. I don't know, you name it. But I think, long story short, I think this world of opera has a lot of potential to explore to expand to the and deepen to the multiple layers and directions. So I'm definitely more than happy to explore further. And then I'm in a way of doing that too. So yeah, thank you.
And Guangli, more game engines in your future?
Yes, definitely. I mean, but yeah, as Erick says, it's really a work which takes a long time and a lot of resources. I mean, I'm actually an independent artist, so yeah, it's a little bit hard for me to each time to build a big project based on game engine. But yeah, definitely I'm going to deep further with this technology. And one thing fascinated me the most with the game engine is the term of simulation. Actually, in the game, we could make eventually everything interactive, and the result is becoming something we didn't expect it from the first time. So it's very interesting for me to re-experience this kind of simulation with my art practice. So yeah, definitely I'm going to do more works with this, but I think it takes more time too. Yeah.
And Veneta, quickly, 10 seconds, because I have to do my summation, but I want to end with a woman.
Yeah, well, game engines, I used them in previous works. So AIVA is also made in Unity. It's a perfect, it's a very useful tool. I really like the possibilities that you have also as an independent artist to put something together, to stage it, and to find a way to tell your narrative. So maybe I just answered quick now.
Thank you. I'm sorry to rush. I have to do the summation, but I really wanted to end on a positive note after these very challenging past couple of years, for us to think of the future, to think of artists now having these extraordinary magical tools through which we can re-enchant humanism. We can bring magic back into the world by actually placing ourselves in the worlds that are being built by artists and actually having lived experiences and feelings from people who are different and othered to ourselves. I'd really, really like to thank Ars Electronica for giving me the opportunity to be here, to be a jury, to find these extraordinary artists, to help my thinking, and to introduce you all to the wonderful, magical thinking of Jamaican philosopher Sylvia Wynter. So thank you, everyone, and thank you to the audience for being here.
Thank you.